today, this message is simple but urgent. Occupy your mind before the enemy does. Occupy your mind before the world does. Because if you don't grab hold of it, if you don't take hold of it, something else will. Because territory is always taken where leadership is absent. And we're called to be leaders, not of other people. Primarily, we're called to lead ourselves. The Bible says we ought to be working out our own salvation with fear and trembling. Therefore, the Bible says, I urge you, do not conform to the patterns of this world. Paul does not begin simply with just how we ought to act. He says, even with our consecration, even with how we renew our inner thoughts. First, he says, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. That means you belong to God, spirit, soul, and body. Your habits belong to Him. Your desires belong to Him. Your mind belongs to Him. You cannot occupy what you have not surrendered. That means not every thought deserves a seat at your table. Not every thought deserves your agreement. Not every thought deserves your meditation. Some thoughts you need to handcuff them and throw away the key. The enemy rarely begins by attacking your public life. He begins by approaching your private thoughts. What you constantly think about is who you will become. That will be the reality of your life. That's what happened in Eden. The serpent did not begin by forcing Eve into rebellion. He began with a conversation. He began with an idea. Did God really say that? That's where the battle started. The enemy knows if he can distort your thinking, he can influence your decisions. And if he can influence your decisions, he can shape your direction. If he can shape your direction, there goes your destiny. That's why your mind matters so much. Some believers try to rebuke in prayer what they've been rehearsing in their thought. You cannot continuously rehearse defeat in your mind and expect victory to dominate your life. So let me ask you this. What thoughts have you been replaying until it has started to feel normal to you? You started to accept it as fact. What inner scripts have you been repeating that does not sound like your Father? Because again, territory is lost. First, in the thought life. Everybody say we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. What God calls unlawful, you must stop calling normal. I'll say it again. What God says unlawful, don't accept that as normal. I feel this strongly right now. Somebody in this room has been tolerating a thought system that God has been trying to tear down in your life. And you're embracing it because sometimes chaos has been normalized in your life and that feels comfortable. But when you do that, you're forming a culture in your mind. Am I helping somebody? Culture is formed by what is consistently permitted in your life. So if you permit fear long enough, guess what? Your life will become a culture of fear where you're just afraid of everything. That will be your first impulse, is to be afraid of everything. What you repeatedly host eventually shapes the atmosphere of your life.